Hi, I'm RC Jim, and guess what? The Decathlon is finished. Hey, we are really happy about that. Let's have a look at the plane. Well, as you can see, it has come up nice. Very happy with it. Got all of the covering done and all of the accent stripes and things on there. Very pleased with the overall outcome. So what do we need to tell you about this? Okay, this stage was the covering, and so naturally we did the yellow first and worked from the bottom surfaces coming up and forward instead of going back. I used multiple pieces to try to make the job a little bit easier, so you can see a bit of a join in here and another one up here. But that makes the covering job a lot easier, and it makes it easier to find all of the bits and pieces that you need. I didn't use the name brand covering, and that might have been a mistake, in that as you can see up here with the nose, the color doesn't quite match on the spray paint that I got and the rest of the plane. It's a slightly lighter sort of green. This, I don't know if it's got a little bit of blue in it or whatever, but just slightly different tone to it. And this is more of a smooth gloss, and that's a little bit more of a luster. But hey, for my purposes, it's okay. I'm not particularly fussed. One day, if I can find the bright yellow, I might repaint that. It'd be really easy to do, you know, if you just find the right paint. But for our purposes, you know, it's quite all right. With the wheel pants, I decided not to put any tape on the top. If I was to do it, what I would do is I'd mimic this thing that I've got here on the top, and I would have this yellow come up, circle around, and then come up to a point on the front sort of a thing. But it seems to be quite secure with just simply those two screws in place, and it gives me access to be able to work on the wheels and stuff like that. So that's not a problem. I've decided not to put on the struts up here. In the instructions, they say it's just for display, well, for appearance, the scale look appearance, that the wing is strong enough as it is without the struts. And the main reason for not doing that is that we've got a battery inside, and you got to take off the wing in order to change the battery. And you can imagine the hassle of trying to take off struts and replace a battery. Just not going to work. Now, speaking of battery, you'll notice we've got it located up here. You recall that we've been doing everything to try and lighten the back and get weight to the front due to the fact that a friend with the same plane has had to put a lot of weight into the nose. So the motor is mounted I think 8 millimeters farther forward than on the plan. And so with trimming off the cowl, you can see the trim line is basically where the screws are. That's where it was supposed to be cut, and the screws farther in. So basically that's out that 8 millimeters farther than what it was on the plan. So I did that, and of course we had the battery tray located right down in the nose. And of course, with the battery in there, you know, it was extremely nose heavy. And in actual fact, without any battery in it all, it balanced about correctly. So what we end up having is a battery tray located right on the intended center of gravity. I think it's 3 1/4 inches back from the leading edge, as I recall. And so that battery tray is located right on that. And because we've got servos underneath, you recall we moved the servos forward from a position back here to a position up here. So the servos are directly underneath that. We couldn't just stick the battery down in there. Had we known this was going to happen, we could have located the servos farther back, and that would have been quite convenient. But given that we didn't know that and we built it this way, that means we have to relocate the battery up higher to get it over top of the servos and things. Plus, we've got formers that go across. Well, there's one in particular, one right back about here that goes across. So what we've done is we've put in plywood bits that go all the way down to where the main structure is longitudinally down here. So it goes all the way down to there, comes up, has a triangle horizontal segment in there to give it strength forward and backward. And then it's got a little seat that this battery tray sets on, and the battery tray can be unscrewed to be able to take it out to work on the radio and stuff like that. So you got the two cross pieces that screw down onto the supports on each side, and then the tray itself actually screws onto the cross piece that's underneath there. And I use screws all around because I didn't know whether I might have to readjust things and all. But now with the battery right in the middle of that tray, it balances fine, and that's with our 4,000 success. When I put a 5,000 in there, I need to scoot it just a little bit farther back, but it still fits in the tray. So it's kind of nice to be able to have something in the middle there where you can have a significantly different weight battery and not have it affect the CG too terribly much. I decided to go ahead and put the safety plug thing on the outside here. And the reason for that was that since we have to get the wing off to get the battery in and so forth, and sometimes you're waiting for another pilot to fly before you get up, I wanted to have a way that I can have the battery in place, have it all set to go, but not have it powered up. And then when it looks like we got an opening to be able to fly, then we can take it up to the flight line, pop in the plug, and off we go. So I'm doing that less so for safety purposes as I am for convenience. So sorry guys, I know some of you think safety is absolutely essential, and hey, more power to you, that's all great. Me, if I had a firearm, I wouldn't have two safety switches on it. I'd have one safety, and one safety is quite adequate. So on my radio, I've got a safety, and to me, that's safe. You could add as many as you like, but anyway, that I don't particularly feel that it's needed. And then secondly, by adding this into the circuit, we've added another failure point. But in this particular case, I'm putting up with a potential failure point in that I need that convenience of being able to apply power quickly when I find an opportunity to fly. Okay, what else do we need to tell you about this? We've got all the radio set up. We've checked the travels on all of the control surfaces. We've checked the incidence on the wing, and that's about correct. Didn't have to put any packers in the back here. We got some foam underneath the edges underneath on the things to hold it up on the holes where the pegs go in. We got a slightly different color scheme on the bottom. Go with the green stripe going out there. Oh yeah, and I was a bit lazy as far as continuing the stripe out onto the ailerons and other control surfaces. Yeah, that could have been done. And the ailerons, that'd be the easy bit, because they're just two on each side, top and bottom. But when you start thinking about the rudder, if I was going to do the same thing here, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them to do. And there's a lot of mucking around trying to match the angle and all of that. These I put on there before the control surface was put on, so that I could come around the edge and all of that type of thing. If I was doing it afterwards, then yeah, it would be easy enough just to run around here, run it out here, cut it through there, stick it down. But I've used actual covering material for this that has to be ironed on. It's not the stickers or the sticky stuff. The sticky stuff, I would just simply do it afterwards, cut it in the middle, and then use my fingernail to stick it down underneath. But because I have to use the heat on this, it's just impractical to get into those gaps with the iron. So those were stuck on before the elevator and so forth was attached. Looking at the underside, you can see the servo installation. We've used the ball link connectors on the servos. Bit of a challenge getting the control horn directly over the line where the pins are, due to the fact that this aileron is so thick. It's got a large indent going down there, but I got it as close as I could to that, and that'll work fine. Servos are indented quite nicely. One thing to keep in mind with the servos is when they give you the dimensions, they don't give you the dimensions of the rubber. So you got the little rubber shock absorbing things that go into the screws. That actually brings it out a little bit, and also I just barely had enough room to get it in there, but it ended up being a perfect fit, so I was very lucky that way. With the windscreen, that's just a little nick on there. I decided to screw it on. So I've got 2 screws on the bottom of each side and 1 screw in the top corner on each side, little M2 screws, and they work out well. And with these windows, I use double stick tape to stick those on. So it, bit of a question as to whether it really needs to get covered up, but they tell you to glue it on and then put a pinstripe tape around it. And 2 things bothered me about that. One is the potential of getting glue all over the clear bit, and then the second thing is all of that pinstriping to go around there. I'm not that keen to go through all that work. So what I used is some double stick tape that has a backing on it. So you can pull off a bit of this, and you can then cut a narrow strip off of it to just use on the edges of that. And with the parts that my son had left over, I couldn't find the windows. So I've just used some cover sheet that we use for report covers in my old business. So a whole bunch of that. So cut it out from there. And in cutting it out, I just simply set it over the plan. And then with the acetate set over the plan, I then just put masking tape on top of it where I needed to cut it all around. And that worked beautifully. So putting that masking tape around the edges where the cuts needed to be, then picked it up, took the scissors, cut along the edge of the masking tape, and yeah, that did a great job. So I was really pleased with that. Upside down here, it's a little bit more obvious as far as the difference in the color of that cowl, the engine cowl, versus the rest of it. On the wheel pants, of course you got the main mounting bolt going through there, but then you add another screw that goes into the little plywood backing piece that's inside there, and that holds it on the angle that you want. I've got mine nosed up just a tiny bit, but mainly thinking about I don't want these things catching in the ground when they're going along the grass. And these Dubro wheels aren't exactly round. So it'll be a bit of a bouncy ride, but it'll get bouncing on the ground anyway. I've now burnt the hole in the bottom, so just in one of the places where I had a hole to reduce the weight back there, I've just simply taken the wood burner and gone around and burned around the edges, which gives you a nice solid edge with the extra plastic that is melded together there. And that's all done. Had an issue with the tail. In the plan, there's supposed to be a bit of balsa down the middle of this. And the way mine worked out, I ended up just having these outside sheets of balsa come together and epoxied in the middle. With this tail wheel, it's supposed to have a piano hinge in there with the plastic bit going into the middle of that. Well, with balsa on each side and epoxy in the middle, the thought of slitting a slot down the middle of that seemed virtually impossible. So what I did is I added an extra pin hinge, so it's got 2 pin hinges higher than that. I added another one right down here, and I'm just depending on those pin hinges to hold it, and just leaving. I cut off the plastic piano hinge thing that was attached to the tail wheel thing there. So we'll see how that goes. Potentially I could have some issues, so I'll need to make sure I continue to inspect the hinges on the rudder there before each flight and after each flight, just to make sure there's no damage that would affect the rudder. And of course the damage would just be when it's knocking along on the ground, and if it takes a hit to the side or whatever, there's a lot of force going on to that little pin hinge. But I couldn't put any in here where the wire is. The wire goes right up to the middle of where that control horn is. So that's the closest I could get a pin hinge to the bottom. For scale appearance, this should be painted, but I don't think they look exactly like that anyway, so I'm happy with the aluminum look. Okay, balance point, 3 1/4 inches back, so I've got a bit of tape on each side so I can look under there, get my finger on that piece of tape, and be able to balance it. I've done testing with the prop and the motor, but we've got the Cobra motor in there, and Cobra ESC, and the result was that with full throttle and just a partially charged battery, just at 22.6 volts, so a little bit better than 50% charged, it is developing 4.2 kilograms of thrust and drawing 50 amps. So we're quite pleased with that. We got an 80 amp ESC in there, and the plane weighs 3.35 kilos. So we're basically got well over the weight of the plane in thrust. And so we're really pleased with that. That's going to give us very good performance. And I am expecting that this is going to fly really, really well. For those of you who have been watching other videos on our site, you would know that we've come up with designs for various wheel chocks to use when transporting the planes in the car. And it works especially good if you've got a car like an SUV with carpeting in the back. But if you don't have that, you can make yourself either say a piece of plywood that's got some carpeting attached to it, or you can just take, like, say, some 3-ply, and just in places where you are going to be positioning planes, just put the Velcro fuzz bit, So anyway, that's a typical thing that we do, where we've got a wheel in the wheel chock, and we get the little bits coming up with a rubber band holding it together, and that works pretty good. Sometimes when they're this narrow, it's a bit of a problem, as far as going side to side. So with the Decathlon, we've got 2 issues. We've got one that I'd like to fix this side to side bit, but secondly, we got wheel pants. So I've come up with a modified design. So the back is lower than the front to allow for the back of the wheel pant to come down. We then have this to where it's turned that way. We put it onto the wheel, and then we turn the little hook over as a hold down. So if it bounces or you hit the brakes hard or whatever else, it's more likely to hold the thing in there. And it's actually pretty well impossible for it to come out, certainly going forward, but even going backwards it has to lift up and it hits that thing. Yeah. So that is really, really secure. So I'm going to stick on the Velcro hooks onto the bottom of that, and we will have our specialty wheel chocks for the Decathlon. Maybe we ought to paint them green and yellow, huh? And yes, I can certify that it fits in a Isuzu MUX SUV. And our wheel chocks work out great. Of course, I got the other ones there when we put other planes in there. But yeah, that does a great job. 1.62 meter wingspan, I think it is. So that's about the limit to getting it in. What we do in getting it in, we start out by hooking the tail into that window area there, and then bring the wing around, main wing around, to point it up towards the front, so to get it in on an angle, move it up to the front, get in from the side, and then turn it sideways the rest of the way. And we still got plenty of room in the back for another plane. Ideal plane, ideal car. Well, speaking of flying, tomorrow morning I take it out, so we can jump forward in time since this is a video, and let's have a look at that first flight. Okay, well, this is our maiden flight today, so let's see how it goes.
Flight mode 1. Throttle active.
Okay, so all the flight surfaces work and the prop spins in the right direction. So that's a good way to get started. Okay, let's see how she taxis. Yeah, feels like it's got some power there. Not a real tight turning circle. Okay, taking off left to right. Oh, she wants to fly and something just came off the plane. I'm gonna land. I got something flapping around. I'm having to use the rudder. Oh. Yeah, I got no aileron control.
No battery. Telemetry lost.
This is months of work.
Yeah, oh, it happens. Well, this isn't the outcome that I desired or expected from this particular plane. Such a shame, such a beautiful plane to end up like this. First thing, we will repair it. So stay tuned and make sure you subscribe, because I'm not giving up this quick. What happened? Next video, I'm going to go into more detail after I've examined some slow motion footage of the crash. It's great to have it on video, so thank you, Ty, for doing the video for me. But basically, no aileron control or imperceptible aileron control. And then I was trying to fly it with a rudder, and you would note that on the taxiing that there was very little rudder control. I mean, it turned, but it wasn't turning sharply. So that means not a lot of rudder deflection. All of those deflections were set up according to the factory settings. But I do note that having changed the ailerons to be more like the actual plane, that having that set amount of deflection that they recommend in the manual on just a aileron that's shorter and fatter, farther out from the front, that it really should have had more deflection, So anyway, next video we're going to get into detail of damage assessment, what we're going to have to do to fix it, and a little bit more of a careful look at what went wrong so that we can make sure that we don't have that same outcome for the second Maiden that we have. So anyway, I trust that it's been helpful to you to see all of these things and maybe get some ideas of what to watch out for. And we haven't finished yet. We're going to keep at it. As I've said before, I don't like it when I crash airplanes. I'd much rather have them keep flying. But when I do crash them, I don't see it as a disaster. I see it as a challenge. What can I do to fix the plane, and what can I do to really make it fly sweet? So make sure that you subscribe. That little circle down there, click on that so that you can keep up with these things. And then if you want to go back and see some of the more details on how we did the build, click this rectangle over here, and that'll take you back to the beginning of this process. Well, I'm RC Jim signing off. You have a great day. Enjoy your flying and your building and your fixing.